Hey everybody, I am back with Samantha Groff of OmniBiz Services. Welcome, Sam.
Hi, Cherie.
So you teach people how to get five-star reviews for their online courses. Tell us a little bit more about that for people who are just getting introduced to you now.
Well, what we do with OmniBiz Services is we support cultivating a sustainable educational experience. This really means taking the onus off of the learner and the instructor and bringing it about in a holistic approach where everybody is equally responsible for the learning that's occurring and the instruction that is happening. Because a lot of the issues that are happening in the world and in education right now are focused on flipping your classrooms and really having a more student-centered learning approach. So we really need to be cognizant of how that applies in the real world, in the business world, and for K-12 learning. So.
Okay, so I know you wanted to talk a little bit more about flipped classrooms, but before we do that, tell us what a five-star review or a group of five-star reviews for the business owner really means. What does it mean in terms of dollars and cents, in terms of referrals, is it really that important is the question that I'm trying to ask you.
Yeah, those five-star reviews are super important. So in the last couple of weeks, I have really talked to a lot of people doing virtual coffees, and they've been amazing. I've connected to a lot of people via LinkedIn and Facebook groups and things like that. And I'm just popping on the phone with people for a half hour, getting to know them more. And in doing this, I've had so many people literally screen share with me the courses that they've recently taken or in the last couple of years have taken and had access to. And they're like, I did not review this well at all because this course did not have materials to help me learn. It was just videos. And we've seen a really big shift in the online course creation world. It used to be all the gurus out there were saying, hey, you need to just put some videos out there and it'll be enough for your learner. Well, as people are getting through these kind of courses, they're not getting those results. So they're not really getting that five-star experience because they're not getting the results that they've been promised. And when you don't get the results you've promised, that means that every student that's taken your class or course and has made that investment in you as a business owner is now not going to have anything nice to say. If they're not getting the results you promised, they have nothing nice to say. So your ROI goes down for every student that has gone through your course when you don't have positive results and when you don't focus on them. If you just focus on lining your own pockets, you're going to have a really sorry end of the day spectrum. It's going to be some zero days because the learner becomes your marketing agency. That when they get those five-star amazing results that you've truly provided them in your course, they become your raving fans. They go out and they tell everybody about why they've done this course, the results they've gotten, and the amazingness. But that comes from you as the instructor really turning education on its head and not following what all the gurus have said since 2014. Like really taking ownership back as a course creator. You need to recognize you're not just creating a passive income stream because education's not passive. You are creating an educational experience for someone else.
Right, right. And you mentioned, so first of all, music to my ears of people referring courses, to their
Mm-hmm.
friends, sharing it with their family, their friends, their colleagues, their bosses. Sometimes a singular person will take a class and then bring it to their Fortune 500 organization who could write you, a six-figure check,
Mm-hmm.
for the course because you've done such a great job in putting that content together. How difficult is it on a scale of 1 to 10 to actually create these types of experiences? Because some people may think, oh, I have to turn Sam off now because this is gonna be so difficult to do that I could never ever do that. But you're shaking your head, so I want you to chat with me just for a second about that.
Well, no, I mean, an example, the lady that I talked to in the last week or so who is doing a social media course online. This is a really big name social media course, and they have a certification program at the end. her issue isn't the video content. She's like, the content is amazing. The problem is that she doesn't learn just by watching a video. She
Hmm.
needs to have scalable notes for herself, or a kinesthetic learning capability. So that's obviously that tactile aspect that we talked about, and keyed in visuals of what's important for the learner to garner out of this information. And you don't want to be like, this is the answer to the test at the end. But as a teacher, you have to say, okay, well, I know I'm going to test them on this. So this is the information I'm going to funnel them to focus on. So
Hmm.
when you're looking at scaling it from a 0 to 10, it's really about a 2 or a 3. If you build your course from the ground up in
Hmm.
this methodology, and really the methodology is taking the learner and putting them at the forefront instead of the other way around. It's not a college classroom. And when you look at it like, I'm a college lecturer and they just have to get whatever it is they want out of this, no one's going to get anything unless they are truly an auditory learner. Like, you've got to acknowledge that most people in this world are not solid auditory learners. I know we talked about it last week, but
Hmm.
30% of people are super mixed in their learning styles, and we got to acknowledge that when we're creating course materials.
Right, right. So, I mean, and that honestly could take you from 5 stars to 3.5 stars, which, or yeah, going down, if you aren't really, learning what Sam is teaching here and actually applying it to your courses. So that could be the difference between 7 figures a
Oh
year
yeah.
and 5 figures a year for our businesses. Um, so let's talk about this concept called flipped classrooms. Flipped classrooms, right?
Yep.
Okay. Uh, Sounds kind of cool.
Well,
Sounds very techy. Why don't you tell us? It's not techy. I know it's not techy at all, but apparently it has some amazing results for people. So, what's flipped classrooms? How did you even discover this as a technique? Because I know that you've been in the classrooms as an educator with our children, so we thank you for that and for that service. But tell us, all, how you discovered this and what it is and why it's important.
well, honestly, a lot of it is that, first off, in today's world, we need to be looking at a flipped classroom style, but I know that a lot of people are reserved for doing that, especially in K-12 learning, because of No Child Left Behind and the implications of not adhering to special ed law. So I'm going to put that caveat out there right now for everyone, because it does take a little bit of reverse engineering. And if you're not prepared to do it from day one, then it will become that 10 that you were asking on the scale. It will become harder if you're not willing to massage it out for everybody's learning style. But the idea of a flipped classroom is simply the learner starts with the information. So that's the perfect avenue for an online course. Now, if you're coaching, or if you're, looking to do any type of learning of content about how to design something or anything of that feature, a flipped learning environment is perfect. And it's because you as the learner get the baseline information first. So
Hmm.
in a non-techie way of putting it, is you deliver the content to the learner, they absorb the content on their own. So video is a perfect version of a flipped classroom, providing reading and resources to students, giving them websites to review information about your topic. So in flipped learning, I could give you a plethora of educational resources to go and
Hmm.
explore what is flipped learning. Um, but it's been around for longer than they've even been tracking it, because teachers have been utilizing this methodology when they started to realize maybe all of the students don't have time to do homework at home, because maybe they're, doing other things, sports and other activities. Maybe their family doesn't have time to help them with learning at home. But the flipped classroom approach provides that singularly independent activity up front. It can be done in a traditional classroom, it can be done as homework, or it can be done as a quiet reading activity or an independent learning activity. But in the online course world, it's really simple. It's literally sending your students those videos, sending them that upfront resource, and then following that up with a call. And
Mhm.
maybe that's a Zoom call with multiple people in your course. Maybe that's a one-on-one call, but you focus then on that call on the information that you've provided in that video previously. And it takes it from the intrapersonal learning and to impacts that interpersonal learning. So now you're sharing and learning and expanding, and you're tapping into all of those intelligences. And that gets the learner a more deeper, very physical, very emotional, you know, connectedness to your learning experience. It also
Yeah.
provides awesome abilities to chunk content. So,
So few weeks ago, I was part of this virtual book club,
mhm.
and it kind of reminded me of the same thing. It was a business book that we were studying about a certain type of technology, and we read the book first, obviously, because it was a book club. So I had my highlighter and I'm reading the book, and I'm thinking I'm doing a great job of
Mhm.
reading the book. And then we get into the book club, and people are mentioning things that I missed in
Uh-huh.
my, like, I would have like three sections of the page highlighted, but then the one section I missed, somebody else came and they brought something so much deeper into the conversation that it made all of us smarter. So as you
Mhm.
were giving that example, I thought about my virtual book club and this exact same thing. When you're able to look and review the information, it doesn't necessarily, it sounds to me like it doesn't necessarily have to take that long
Mhm.
for the student to review the information, but it also gives the student a chance to absorb it and to think about it and to think about what their questions are and to be smarter when they get in the virtual Zoom or the virtual or the classroom or the conference call or whatever it is, with you once you're done. So then they're like, oh, all of a sudden their learning experience becomes exponential because they had a chance to kind of absorb the information on their own and then come and hear what other people are thinking about it as well. Um,
all
Another
the
thing,
research all the research has proven that the students that do exactly what you're saying have
mhm.
far better results than a traditional classroom where you're just getting lectured.
Yeah, well, another thing I will say again, this is from a technology realm, but I'm sure it works with a lot of other people.
Mhm.
We have a friend in this virtual book club, and she's very smart with like explaining things in a very simplistic manner. And one of our other members of our book club went to a job interview and explained this concept, like my friend in the book club, and ended up getting the job. I kid
There
you.
you go. See?
Yes, yes, yes.
Interpersonal learning does
Yes,
amazing.
exactly. So I just bring that, and obviously for the book club, she gets a 5-star review because because we were all having this discussion. So I think that's interesting. Um, so you talk about how flipped classrooms will impact what's called instructional design.
Mhm.
Okay, so tell us a little bit more about that. What is instructional design? What does it mean? And how do we take this great concept that you are presenting to us and actually apply it?
So, instructional design is really a concept that corporate likes to use and say that that is how you teach. It's teaching at a corporate level versus teaching K-12 or collegiate level. Instructional design really, it's about how do you get the most efficient, productive model of learning in the hands of your corporate employees. And it sounds really exciting and fancy when you look at it, but it's no different than a K-12 teacher. It's just that they're applying it to adult learning.
Hmm.
And we've talked about this already before, but adults and children learn the same way. It's just delivery method. It's just the difference of delivery method. And
Hmm.
kids and adults thrive in flipped classrooms. It's just how do you garner that knowledge and how do you make sure that they stay engaged?
Hmm.
So instructional design with the flipped classroom concept for the entrepreneur and the small business is going to be focused on how do you choose to deliver your content up front, and then that way you're Follow-up calls and your Zoom calls obviously are then relative to what you've presented. And that way, if you're looking at making an evergreen course, when you are having students funnel into this course and the course material, they'll know at X point in time, I need to set up a one-on-one call or join a group call, or you've already established a fully functional community around your course to be able to support that evergreen model of people coming in at different times
Mm-hmm.
and learning at different phases and stages. Flipped classrooms are fabulous for that, because what it does is it's allowing the people that are the students that are further ahead to be able to help those first coming in. It's
Mm-hmm.
heterogeneous learning at its greatest, and you really just have to make sure that you're adhering to ADA compliance. That is probably the biggest challenge that
And what is ADA?
Americans with Disabilities Association, and we're looking
Okay.
at making sure you're compliant for all those people that have special needs out there, or learning disabilities or physical disabilities. And this has come to the forefront in the last year or two, even for website compliance. So making sure that you're providing materials that reach people who maybe have visual impairments. I mean, we have 1 in every 5 people in the world are, some form of learning disabled. And that can mean that, or learning impaired. That can mean that they might have a visual impairment, or they have a hearing impairment, or maybe they are having some sort of cognitive dissonance where they're not necessarily able to garner information easier. They might have to have it broken down even more smaller chunks. But we
Mm-hmm.
have to be acknowledging that. And when we build our online courses from this methodology, from the idea of a flipped learning environment, and when you already are chunking your materials and you're already putting them in multiple intelligences capabilities and multiple learning style capabilities, you're already complying to ADA.
Mm-hmm.
When you're doing that, you then don't have to really worry about getting slapped with a lawsuit down the road. That is a real situation, because everybody does everybody deserves equal opportunity education. It's not just for the wealthy, and it should never be. So when you start acknowledging that the learner should be the forefront of it,
Mm-hmm.
then you start to design your course materials around that. I mean, on LinkedIn, I have seen so many conversations recently where professionals in the instructional design field are like, you need to start putting the learner first. That should have always been the case. If you haven't been, then you've been doing every student that's ever walked through any of your course materials a complete disservice. Yes, okay, the large corporation may be paying you, but if that large corporation is paying you, but they're not actually taking care of their employees and actually worried about the learner's end result and just their bottom line, they're not going to be successful in the long run, because, oh, wait, now they're going to have high turnover rates. Oh, wait,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to have to re-educate every new employee that they hire and bring them on board. And onboarding is expensive.
Yes, it's very expensive. So, and you mentioned you did, you know,
Sorry,
you,
I went on a
you said a
tangent
lot. No, no,
there.
no, you did. You said a lot, but it got me thinking with what we talk about with the auditory and kinesthetic and visual learners. You multiply that with this ADA compliance and the fact that 1 out of 5 people in this country are learning impaired. If our courses do not address those two things, I can clearly see how we can go from 5-star reviews to 3.5-star reviews very easily. Or if we have a course right now, let's say somebody's watching this and it's 3.5,
Mhm.
3.6 stars, then understanding these two concepts and being able to apply them can all of a sudden change the trajectory of that person's course, of the impact. Because I do believe we, as educators, as online course providers, or just course providers in period, we want to have impact. I think only 5% of the entrepreneurial world is like truly opportunistic where they don't care. I think let me get serious. I think
Oh, I believe you.
95% of us do care. We want to have an impact with our courses, and the information that you're providing really does move us forward with that. So, um, is there anything else we should know about the flipped classroom, as a concept, as how we apply it, anything like that? Any other information you want to tell us?
Really, when you're looking at online courses, they should be designed as a flipped classroom. And I know it sounds repetitive, but at the end of the day, um, online courses cannot be a passive form of income. They're not a passive stream of income. Even evergreen courses should not be passive, because education is not a passive thing. Even you read your book and you
Mhm,
got information out of it, that's passive, but
mhm,
because it's intrapersonal, but
mhm,
you had some engagement with the material. But true learning for you occurred in that interactive space, and
yes.
acknowledging that. That doesn't have to be a heavily laden LMS platform with SCORM compliant, all sorts of interactive tools and games. You know, it can be as simple as a human interaction and conversation instead
Mhm,
of overcomplicating things.
mhm. Yeah, which is why, I love how you've been talking to various people through what you're calling virtual coffees.
Mhm.
I like that. um, so, or people getting on and doing some form of a mastermind or a book club, or for our online educators being able to, have office hours or things like that where people are able to come and either ask questions, or you could have a lecture every week. So I think there are a bunch of different ways we're able to present our
Mhm.
information to the world and make an impact, make the impact that we want to make.
To read
So
an
yes.
example, like I've been seeing a lot of webinars being put out right now, and a lot of people are like, okay, because now I can't do my events in person. Well, a webinar. Well,
Mhm,
that's not a flipped classroom. That's a traditional learning environment. And
mhm,
now, when you're delivering your content for the first time to your students, now they have to absorb whatever little bit you're sharing with them, and then they're having breakout groups. Well, that's direct learning. That's, immediate, like I'm supposed to absorb, interact, absorb, interact, absorb, interact. And
mhm,
that's not giving real process time. Now, if
mhm,
you're looking at like very broad, high level soft, skills like soft skills, and maybe, and you're not looking at in-depth analysis or learning at like concrete skills where you have to actually go and implement something, a webinar is great. But if you're looking at longevity of the learning and connectivity to the learning that's supposed to
mhm,
be occurring, that webinar can be easily, taken and flipping it and making a flipped classroom webinar where you would have delivered a very small chunk of information, whatever the content you really wanted them to discuss, maybe
mhm,
in a simple email. Like, these are our bullet points for today to discuss. Come prepared to talk.
mhm.
That will actually create that much more depth it'll in your discussions than the breadth.
Right, right. Well, I love it, and I was intending to do a webinar in a couple of days, and you've kind of convinced me to pre-release. No, 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 no. Actually, it's really good to pre-release some of the information just to get people thinking about it. So you have officially convinced me to do that. So um, if somebody wants to have virtual coffee with you in order to discuss the courses that they're putting out there, how do people reach out to you? What's the best way for them to do that?
Okay, so on our website, which is omnibusservices.com, there's a lot of buttons, and all of them take you to my calendar to literally set up a call. You can set up a virtual coffee there, in any way possible, whatever fits your, life, at that time. And you can find me on LinkedIn, which is super easy. I'm Samantha Groff on LinkedIn, or you can find Omnibus Services on LinkedIn as well. I'm on Facebook at Omnibus Services, and we have a free Facebook group. So if you want to have more of these kind of live discussions available, it's called Omnibus Course Creation. So there are all the platforms that we're very active on. We are on other things like Twitter and Pinterest and stuff, but we're not as active. We focus predominantly on Facebook and LinkedIn.
Cool, cool. Well, I always learn so much from talking to you. So you're always a wealth of information. Um, anything else you want to tell people before we leave?
Just really when you're looking at creating your courses, remember everybody is a learner and how they learn is different. And when you really focus on that everybody learns differently and you design courses to meet a plethora of needs instead of just your need, you have way better results. Your students end up liking it more and everyone's happier in the long run.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And again, your website one more time for people who want to schedule a call.
Omnibizservices.com.
Omnibusservices.com. Okay. Thank you so much and have a great day, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.